Hi my lovelies, welcome to a series of videos that are going to be a start-off guide on how to crochet. So completely for beginners. This will be where you haven't ever even picked up a hook before, picked up a ball of yarn. I'm going to be taking you through from start to finish exactly what you need, what the different types of yarns are, what the different types of hooks are, how to read a pattern, just everything you would question before you started a crochet pattern. So just in this video, I am going to show you what you would need before you started crocheting, and this would vary greatly depending on what it would state in the pattern, but these are the kind of things that you want to have around the house just in case you do need them for a particular pattern that you've got. Now, crocheting can be very cheap or it can be very expensive. It depends on the kinds of things you are making. If you wanted to make something small, such as a dishcloth or maybe a scarf, something, on the smaller side, then you're not going to be using too much yarn, and that way it does keep it on the lower side of cost-wise. If you're going to go crocheting a long cardigan, a long coat, a blanket for a double bed or a king size bed even, that is when you are going to see your costs mount up. But not only that, that is something that would take you 6 months plus, I'd imagine, because crocheting is not something that's done quickly, sadly, unless you've been doing it for years and years and years and you know exactly what you're doing. You're not going to be quick to begin with. So let's go ahead and get started with this video, and I'll show you exactly what you need for your projects. So to begin with, quite obvious really, we've got some yarn here. The project that you're doing will tell you the type of yarn you need. You can, almost depending on the pattern, pick what colour you would like, but sometimes obviously if you're making a particular character you will want to go with a certain colour, but it will give you a description, and I'll go through in another video why there are different types of yarns or wools and what they all mean and what they're used for. Moving on to your next item, you will 100% need a hook. These are the hooks that I use. Again, I'm going to do another video on the different types of hooks and what they're all about. And these are the best ones that I think that you can get. They work out at between £4 to £6 each on Amazon. And I don't know if you can see just there, it says Clover. This is a Clover Amour hook, as in AMOUR. And you can pick up a set of these on Amazon for about £35 as well. Now, when you are doing a pattern, it will tell you what size hook you need, and it will either tell you the letter or more commonly, it will tell you the size. And most crochet hooks will tell you what size they are on the hook. If it doesn't, it's because they tend to be either really, really cheap plastic ones that come free with something, or it will be some hooks that have been custom made perhaps and handmade, and they don't necessarily have that on them. So I would advise, until you're sort of really, really savvy with your hooks, to definitely go for some that have it marked on what type of hook they are. So the difference in the hooks and the reasons that we have different sizes is because it depends on the width of this part here. I call this a barrel. I don't actually 100% know what it should be. I realise I should have checked before this video, seeing as I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about. But it is the width between this bit here. And this is, when you're crocheting, this is the space that you want to hold your yarn. You will find that it's a lot slimmer down the hook end, which will affect the size of your stitches. So you need to keep your work on this portion when you are crocheting. just to show you another hook, I've got another clover hook here, just to show you the difference. When you buy things like from Clover, the more expensive hooks, or there are some cheaper ones on Amazon as well that also look like this, you will notice that they've all got different colour handles on them, and that way you can just distinguish between them more easily. So this one is an E and it's a 3.5, and again it's one of my Clover hooks. So the other item that I've got here is a darning needle. Now this is a needle with a large eye, and this is used after we finish crocheting to sew in our ends or darn in our ends, so just to make the project look more complete and we're not left with straggly ends hanging out. Just like, for example, we wouldn't want, oh, that didn't work how I wanted it to. Imagine this was the crochet, we wouldn't want an end hanging off like this, so we would use the darning needle just to thread those ends in. This one has got, as you can see, a bent tip. These are more commonly used for crochet, which is called amigurumi. Amigurumi means crocheting into the round for soft toys and plushies. So you will find darning needles, a lot of them look like that, so they are completely straight. It just so happens that today I've been using one of these. You may actually often get packs which has got a mix of both in. It's completely down to personal preference. It's completely down to personal preference which ones you wish to use. They don't make a difference at all. I just find these a lot easier to use, easier to pick up the stitches with that bent tip on it. Next item you will need a pair of scissors just to cut your yarn when you've finished with a certain colour or when you've finished your project. These don't have to be anything specific. They don't have to be, for example, particular yarn scissors. I don't know if there is such a thing actually. I know there's fabric scissors. You don't need fabric scissors. Could anyone let me know in the comments if there is such a thing as yarn scissors? If you know, I don't have a clue. But just any old cheap old pair of scissors would do from Poundland or Pound Stretchers. Do they still exist? I'm not 100% sure. But you know what I mean. Just scissors from anywhere. Just as long as they cut yarn, that's all you need. And then aside from that, we will need some pins. These are quite pretty ones that I picked up from the range. And I got them recently and they were only a couple of pounds. And they've got like huge diamantes on the end. And I think they're really pretty. So I was quite happy to find these. They didn't have normal pins. They only had these ones. And I thought, yes, they're definitely going in my basket. So yeah, I think they were £2 from the range if you want to get something similar. And we use pins. For example, let me see if I can find a crochet project here and I'll see if I can show you what we would use a pin for. So this is one of my more recent projects, and as you can see, we've got two different colours here, the beige and the black, and both were crocheted separately. So I crocheted the hat first, and then I made the eye of the monster. And to attach them, I pinned this eye onto the hat and then sewed around it with my darning needle. So I had to pin that one on, and that's the reason I needed the pins. So last thing that I've got in front of me here are these colourful things, and these are called stitch markers. I know I've mentioned this in a video before, but the first day that I had them, I took a stitch marker out, left the box open. Biggest mistake I've ever made, dropped them on the floor. It was like dropping a bucket of Lego. Don't do it, please. Shut the box every time you take one out. Just trust me, it is painful. You don't want to do it. It took me a very long time to get it looking like this again, and even now you can see some are hooked over. They're not completely in the right place, but it'll do. So stitch markers are used to mark our rows, funnily enough, or mark certain stitches, I should say. It always helps to put a stitch marker in the beginning of the row and the end of the row so we don't miss any stitches out. When you're first starting crocheting, it's quite difficult to know which is your first stitch and your last one. So it's quite common when you're first starting to put a stitch marker in the beginning and the end of your row, just so you know where you're crocheting into. And I'll just open that box and I'll show you one. So I've taken out a green one. Yes, I'm closing that box just to prevent any mistakes. So that stitch marker there is open. So you would thread that one in through the stitch and just push it like that to close it. And then push it like that again to open it. So very simple. The only thing that I don't actually have here to show you, because I'm sure you've all seen one before anyway, is a tape measure or a ruler if you don't have a tape measure to hand. As long as you've got one or the other, it's more common than not to use a tape measure, because if you're making something for yourself, you will need to measure certain parts of your body depending on what you're making, and also be able to measure your work. So you obviously can't measure yourself with a ruler. But just as you're starting out, don't worry about it too much, because you're only going to be doing beginner projects to begin with anyway. So you shouldn't need one right at the beginning. But as things move on and you move on to your more intermediate patterns, that's when you might need a ruler. So I think that's everything for now. This was our video on what you need to be able to start crocheting in our series of videos of beginner crochet. I hope you feel a little bit more clued up as to what kind of thing you will need now. And just remember to hit the subscribe button to make sure that you get the notification for the next video, and also give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Thanks ever so much. We'll see you shortly. Happy hooking!